accepts that piece of paper as the money, as the legal tender. That's why it's called fiat. By declaration, you have to accept it. So that makes them a cartel, and it's probably because the dollar is the reserve currency of the world. It's probably the most powerful cartel in the whole world. It might have been the most powerful cartel ever in the history of the world, as far as I could see.
All right, let's talk about some of the people who have been in charge of the Fed, the Federal Reserve. There's Paul Volcker, who took it upon himself, I gather, to increase interest rates to a tremendous level to, fight inflation. And so he was manipulating the markets, and then you've got Greenspan, who, I guess, and others pretty much have done the same thing. They decide how much money goes out. They decide what the interest rates are going to be. I mean, it's almost Orwellian, the power that these people have by controlling our money. Is that a fair way of describing it?
It is, and they believe that they're truly responsible central economic planners. One time when I challenged Greenspan on this, who used to believe in the gold standard, he said that he was convinced that central bankers now have learned how to manage the monetary system as if it were gold. Well, look at what he did. He took interest rates down to 1%, inflated, created the bubble, and now we're trying to get out of this mess by doing very much the same thing: spend, borrow, and inflate the currency. So, but they come to believe it. They really do. It's delusional. They have the power. They benefit at the same time. They probably don't see themselves as being evil. They probably see themselves as good managers. And when things are going up, when the bubble's being blown up, there's a lot of people who do appear to be helped. In the last several years, when people were buying houses that shouldn't have been buying houses, they didn't have any money down, and they bought a house for $100,000, and it went up to value $200,000, and they'd borrow against that. They thought it was miraculous. So people thought they were benefiting, but you just can't get wealthy. A country can't get wealthy that way. If that were the case, Americans would never have to work again if we think that they're going to continue to take our dollars. So there had to be an end point, and we're not at the end point yet. We're sort of in the middle of it. The financial structure has come undone, but the dollar still exists, and we still use the dollar, and the cost of living is still going up, but not as fast. But I think we're embarked on a course where we will destroy the dollar unless we quit.
What is a dollar worth?
Well, a dollar is worth what you can buy, what you can purchase with it, but there's no definition for it. It used to be that if you had $35, you could get an ounce of gold. But a dollar's worth what the people will take, and you can still, you can go out and you can spend it, but it's trusting the fact that that the money will maintain its value. The thought, though, if anybody today, I don't think, even a lot of people don't understand exactly what's going on. There's very few people that would say, I'm going to have to save for my kids' education, so I'm going to buy, let's see, it'll cost me $10,000 for his education. I'm going to buy $10,000 worth of Treasury bills, and I'm going to save them, for 10 years or 20 years. Well, nobody does that. I mean, everybody knows the cost of the education is going to be 2 or 3 times as much, and the Treasury bills won't be worth anything. So it's all a game they're playing, and mainly because you can't define the money. You have to define the money. The monetary unit is supposed to measure all our economic transactions. It's like it's a measuring rod, like a yardstick, and we can't even define it, and it changes all the time. And then we wonder why the economy gets, shaky and collapses, and because we have no definition of our money. Why
did we ever get off the gold standard? I guess it started with Roosevelt, and then Nixon put the final knife in his heart. But why? I mean, to me, it would make all the sense in the world that this piece of paper that they're calling a dollar, it's not money. It's supposed to represent value. And so why would they ever get away from the gold standard, or even silver, backing it with silver, something tangible? Why did they do that?
I think it's power. Governments have done it for a long time. All throughout history, they always have monopoly control over money, a cartel, and they always abuse it, and they do it for their own benefit. In the old days, they would maybe just clip the edges of a gold coin in order to get more gold, or they would dilute the metals like we did in the 1960s with the silver coins, and then they went to printing, and now we just use a computer. We still talk about printing money, but it's actually just a computer. They can do it so much faster. But it gives them power. It gives them a chance to do things that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise if they had to pay for it. And it's also a benefit to the people who get to use the money first. So if you're in the government, if the government's spending the money, or the military-industrial complex that might get the money, or the banks who get to spend it early on, they all benefit because the dollar has more value than after 2 or 3 years it circulates. And then the average person might see, oh, the cost of energy has gone up, the cost of education has gone up, the cost of medical care has gone up, and they don't see the connection. And so it's power. I think power is the number one reason governments want power over the people, and power, and also for the wealth that they can accumulate by manipulating this. But it's dangerous because eventually those people who are playing these games, they'll be brought down as well. There were people who benefited by the inflation in Germany, but look at what finally happened in Germany. Everything goes down eventually.
Now, you had mentioned that the costs go up. You see the costs increasing. I'm going to play the devil's advocate and say that the costs really aren't going up. It's the value of the dollar that's going down.
Right. That's true. We refer to it as the prices are going up. Actually, when people talk about, well, inflation is only 1.5%, there's no problem. I don't even like that, because what they're referring to is the CPI. Of course, they changed the definition of CPI when the CPI is going up too fast. But what is the inflation is the increase in the money supply and diluting the value, and sometimes it pushes some prices up. If you have a lot of productivity in a certain segment, prices don't go up. For instance, with all this monetary expansion over the decades, you take something like a cell phone or a computer or a television, those prices can actually come down. But other things, like when the government gets involved in education or medical care, those prices go up much faster. In theory, people say, well, if you'd increase the money, double the money supply, if you doubled the wages and doubled everybody's prices, no big deal. And the truth is that wouldn't be a big deal, but that's not the way it works. Some people suffer a lot more than others because wages never keep up, and some prices go up faster than others. And so the fallacy is that you're creating wealth when you create new money, but that obviously is not the case. Otherwise, we could all be very wealthy.
Indeed. Question. It seems as if the government has been printing lots and lots of money over at least the last 2 or 3 years. Former President Bush was, I think, fiscally irresponsible, grossly irresponsible with his deficits, and I have to believe, it's my impression that the government kept printing and printing money to pay for the war in Iraq and all that, and as bad as it was under Bush, and it was horrendous, it's now like 10 times, or at least 4 or 5 times worse. It seems as if they're printing just that much more money. If that's the case, Dr. Paul, then why have we not seen inflation yet?
Well, I think we did. We saw inflation in the NASDAQ stocks all through the 90s. It was up to 5,000, and that was a bubble created artificially, and now it's down to, 1,500 or something. So it went up then. Then after that, the bubble, the money, the inflation, if you want to call the prices inflation, the housing prices went skyrocketing.